Okay, folks, this is it. One final time for full length, eh? So, first of all, of course, um, thank you to all the patrons who, really felt that they had to experience every single episode, in full length, every single moment, joining me on my own journey through this incredible anime and story. So I thank you, I really do. And thank you for joining me one last time. But again, this might just be the end of the episodic format. But it's not done just yet on the channel. I mean, it's not going to be done on the channel, but it is going to take a bit of a break, right? Before I get to the manga. But even before that, there is another, there's something else still coming, right? I've kind of renamed it. Instead of, just the Chimera Ant arc wrap up, I'm just going to use that as a series wrap up. It's possible by the time this comes out, I've already mentioned it, or maybe not, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'll use that as a series wrap up, just kind of go through maybe all of the arcs. Perhaps it might have a major focus on the Chimera Ant arc, but ultimately I think I'll probably end up using it as a series wrap up as well. So yeah, that is going to be on the horizon as well. That's not going to be immediately after this, but it's coming up. That is another thing that's going to come up before there's a much more substantial break before I get into the manga stuff. Okay, I like it. Giving me as much runtime as possible. Iconic Island. Fitting.
子供を捨ててでも続けたいと思う仕事なんだね。ハンターってそれだけすごい仕事なんだね。あんたやっぱり
He sure is, Mito-san. He's cut from the same cloth. He's got that gene. Kai. OG Kai. But you did it, Kai. I hope Gon gets to find out. Beginnings and endings. Endings and beginnings. There he is. Oh. The journey. Everything he's been through. And I've been through. Oh, I love this approach. Yeah. This is him thinking back to all of those moments. And again, a reminder for us, the audience, as well, right? Yeah. The good, the bad, the ups and downs. The profound. Hey, Nobunaga. Oh. Oh, he can feel the life force. Oh, I love that he's reconnecting with nature. Or getting a chance to do that. Sure you can. Of course you can. Look at that. The unbreakable spirit of Gone Freaks. Oh, kind of looks like a nest. Oh, that's great. Whoa. Above the clouds. at this elevation as well.
びくった。
Hey,
待ちくたびれたぞ。
ち
it looks much cooler up here. Look at the side by side here. Yeah, he picked this for a reason.
いい眺めだろう。
Yeah, sure is.
曇りの日は一面雲海になる。
Yeah, you can see it's kind of above
ジンが欲しいものって何？
immediately.
今目の前にないもの
Hmm.
だな。
目の前にないもの？
The next goal, the next target, the next destination.
俺がハンターになろうと思ったのは、当時俺が行きたかった場所に入るのにハンターが一番現実的だったからだ。
To gain access and
その場所はある王族の埋
Whoa.
葬施設とされてたんだが、見返りも業績も求めず大金をつぎ込めるやつなんで、
there's a few though. Select professions.
俺は逆にチャンスだと思った。プロハンターって信頼を得れば金はなんとかなるからな。15の時に特定非営利活動法人を設立して応募の調査と修繕を行った。
I saw hints of something similar, right?
俺はいつも今俺が必要としてるものを追ってる。実はその先にある本当に欲しいもの、
Ah,
どうでもいいくらいにな。
the process, right?
わかんねえか。じゃあもう少し話す。
Fall in love with the process.
念願かなって応募の中に足を踏み入れた時、俺が一番嬉しかったのは、ずっと願ってた応募の真実を
あー
目にしたことじゃなく、一緒に中へ入ったそいつらと顔を見合わせて握手した瞬間だった。
Yeah. Oh. The journey itself. There you go. He gets it.
そいつらは今も無償で役員をしながら俺に生きた情報をくれる。この連中と比べたら応募の真実はただのわけさ。
Connections of a
大
lifetime.
切なものは欲しいものより先に。
Yeah, this is exactly the concept. That's right, Gone.
今は？
あ？
今は何を追ってるの？
今か。少し説明がいるな。だがこの木の真実は成長の止まった若木だ。栄養が足りなくてこれしか育たなかった世界中なんだ。
Whoa. Look at that. Yeah, Gon's got a similar reaction. That really captured his imagination and mine. Holy shit.
本当の世界樹はマグマを吸って山脈に根付き大気圏を越えてなおでかくなる。
Did I not see one of these?
外側で。
この世界って？
お前もよく知ってる世界地図さ。
What?
お前や会長が戦ったアリも外側から来た外来種。学校じゃ教えてくれない真実だ。
So I'm getting
常識のある大人はあえてパンドラの箱に触れまいとしている。
the other, Nanika, must have come from the same place. And the Chimera and Queen. Yeah. He's cut from the same cloth,
俺
Jing.
たちが知ってるこの世界はとてつもなく大きな世界のほんの一部だってことにな。
Whoa.
ある時代のある地域の選ばれた人間はあっちに行ってきた記録を遺物に残してる。
Netero, 100%. Take it to the bank. He's got to be one of them.
俺が欲しいものは今も昔も変わらない。 目の前にない何
Mm.
かだ。
Gon has a complete understanding for Jing now.
外へ行くために必要なもの
Ooh,
は
okay.
出発するまでだけで最低4つある。許可、手段、資格、契約。俺はまだこの中の
Really?
一つも手に入れてない。
Huh.
だが別に急いでいない。道中を楽しんでる最中だ。だからもしお前の行き先が将来俺と重なるようなら道草を楽し
Beautiful.
み。
Beautiful.
大いにね。
Perfect.
欲しいものより大切なものがきっとそっちに転がってる。
Classic Gon. Ah!
これカイトに頼まれてたんだ。ジェンに返しておいてくれって。
Ah,
そうか。
it's perfect. It's perfect.
そん時の傷が
Oh, this is so charming, man. So wholesome. It's perfect. Folks, it's perfect. Okay. Yes. No translation. Ah, the bet. Yeah, all five did kind of take. Yeah, they took part. Aw, the goat. Aw. Oh. Yeah. Oh. Whoa. Nicely done, Killua. Oh, hey, nice. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, he's calling him again. No response. Scarlet eyes again. Whoa, okay. He's been busy. Oh, the coins. Goto. So Killua doesn't know? Hey, it's one of those things. From the beginning. Ah, wow. No. The marshal and the spy. Oh, the swans. Oh, the mine, the treasure. Oh.
道草を楽しめ。大いにな。欲しいものより大切なものがきっとそっちに転がってる。
That's Tagashi speaking to the audience now. Wow. Ugh. That's perfect. Just completely satisfying and just the right amount of setup for the things to come. If you choose to continue. And I choose to continue into the manga. I'll get there, folks. Okay, and that is Hunter x Hunter. Complete. Episode 148. To be frank, as I sit here, I mean, it kind of feels baffling almost that I actually completed a 148 episode anime. Once upon a time, maybe not even too long ago, the idea, the notion of that probably felt so far-fetched. It did actually feel legitimately far-fetched. Like exceedingly unlikely that I could, ever get through an anime that long. Not because I didn't want to, just because of, I don't know, other, reasons. Given the length and given, time issues and all of that for content creation, and just the daunting task of committing to something of this magnitude, because again, I don't want to commit to something I cannot complete. Yes, I know there's still stuff that needs to be completed on the channel, but that's essentially a guarantee. Stuff is going to get completed, but this, it's a commitment. 148 episodes is a commitment. I mean, I suppose I've been doing Doctor Who on the channel for about 7 years. Really long time. It's the longest running series at this point, and it's probably going to remain the longest running series on the channel. 7 years of Doctor Who. And that's about to come to an end as well. But yeah, again, there's a bit of a difference. There's a bit of a difference. I committed to that a long time ago, but committing to Hunter x Hunter, 148 episodes or 146, minus the recaps, it's still a major commitment. And it's a commitment that I did kind of steer clear of. But ultimately I got to it, and here I am now, and here all of us are at the end of it, end of the line. But the thing is, it doesn't feel like the end of the line because again, the story continues. But that being said, like I said during the episode, this is such a perfect finale for the anime. I mean, it's legitimately as satisfying as it could be in the final episode of this anime. And then also, more than enough there to entice the audience to continue if they choose to, right? To continue the story, because there are some bombshells in this one, right? right at the final moment in the final episode, I get something out of this episode that is just legitimately just mind-blowing, right? But also, once you kind of get over it, then it's like, okay, that does make sense, right? You think of the Chimera ants, you think of Nanika, the other, it kind of makes a lot of sense, that there is another explanation for these really interesting and unique creatures, right? Of course, I'll get into that. Something really quite interesting that Jing brings up. And, they actually allocate a decent chunk of runtime to that, right? The world beyond and all of that, and how to get there and the requirements to get there. And apparently, even someone like Jing has nothing to show for it just yet out of the 4 requirements. A bit of a shocker for me, I'd say. A bit of a surprise. I thought, he'd have like at least one of those things ready. But again, Jing reiterates one of the major components of this episode, and a major component of the series as a whole, right? He's in no rush. He's enjoying the journey, the process, right? The detours. I mean, I'll come back to that in a moment. Let me kind of finish up my point about, the length of the anime. And, possibly because of this experience, maybe it does kind of, bring up the possibility, maybe just the possibility of something like Naruto maybe happening on the channel at some point. Now that I do have this experience under my belt of a much larger anime, much, longer anime. Now listen, of course, if ever in the next, year or so, or in the next couple of years, I do actually get to do Naruto, I'm guessing I'll have to do it without any of the fillers, right? And Naruto, I know, listen, I've seen the comments over the years, and of course it's flattering because a lot of people think that kind of stuff is not for me, that I should spend my time on other stuff. The thing is, something like Naruto, that I feel like that could be more of like a not a side anime, but a totally different type of project, Now, I'm not saying, I'm not saying that Naruto is not going to have a lot of stuff to discuss, but, perhaps not as much as something like Ava or maybe Attack on Titan, but, still a lot of good stuff in there. I mean, I've always had that idea in my mind that, at some point I would do Naruto, right? Just because it is one of the classics of anime, right? And listen, if I don't end up doing it on the channel, I'll just I'll just watch it off screen. Once maybe I make a choice, make a decision, then I'll decide, okay, it's probably unlikely that I'll do it on the channel. Then I'll just kind of watch it on my own. But if there is enough interest, and if I see that there are openings there for something like Naruto, I'm still open to that idea. And just to reiterate, something like Naruto, if, it does end up happening down the line, I don't think it's going to be taking anything away from any of the other stuff I'm doing on the channel, right? It would be kind of in a different type of category. But yeah, that's kind of my, take on Naruto at the moment. As I complete an anime that is 148 episodes long, it does give me a bit of, I don't know, I suppose a semblance of hope that, maybe I could get to that one day. Maybe one day, yeah. Listen, I'm not sure how much longer I'll be around on YouTube. I mean, of course, I hope it's years and years to come, but yeah, let's see. That's just my take on Naruto and the idea of long running anime that could potentially happen on the channel. But yeah, let's kind of get into the finale, the grand finale. Though, I must admit, episode 147 actually might feel a bit more like a proper finale. This almost has like an epilogue feeling to it, right? A lot of it. I mean that's not a bad thing. I just feel like episode 147 still had a lot to work out in terms of analyzing it and discussion points and all of that. This one, it just kind of, again, I've used the term a few times now. It felt like a celebration, a proper wrap up, a check-in, right? With all of these people in addition to Gon and Jing, right? And that's just it's perfect. Everything about that get together, that meeting, that coming together is just perfect. Completely, absolutely perfect in my opinion. And I'm sure that even the most militant of Jing haters probably got a bit of a smile out of that one, right? That okay, Jing, he's not all bad, right? He's actually kind of cool. I'm speaking, maybe for some of the people that might not be the biggest fans of Jing. As you know, I've always kind of liked Jing, that's just how I approach these characters. Yes, he's flawed, again, of course, the idea of him as a father, it's been, up for discussion since the beginning, of course, since day one, since episode 1. Hell, it's brought up in the beginning of this episode as well, as a reminder to just the audience, I suppose, the reason Gon sets out on this journey in the first place. But of course, you kind of also have to bring in episode 1 of the 99 Hunter x Hunter as well, kind of mix the two, I suppose. And then, I love that you get OG Kite's voiceover as well. I thought that's a great touch. Just the whole opening is a great touch, I'd say. And, again, I think it serves as a reminder for many things, even for Mito-san. Gon is just a little bit different. At the end of the day, he is just like his father. He's got that gene in him. He's cut from the same cloth. He is an explorer at heart. He certainly has that sense of wonder and adventure. All of the same things that Jing possesses, right? And I think, for Jing, it's a really, I don't know, I think I almost said profound. It might be a profound experience, but I think it's a great experience for Jing as well to finally have this one-on-one at the top of the world, essentially this world, at least. Listen, before I'll get to the that section, but I kind of want to focus on that real quick, just to kind of clear something up in my own mind, I suppose. Now, just from the depiction of it, I'm thinking this is uncharted territory rather than, I don't know, a different planet. It's not really presented as that, is it? In the depiction of its map. Yeah, I mean, my immediate thought is that it's just uncharted territory, but it's not. It's a bit more than uncharted territory. It's the type of territory that's nearly impossible nearly impossible. But there's been an expedition there before, according to Jing. And like I said, I'll put down any amount of money, and I'll bet that at least one of them had to be Netero. I'm so sure of that. He just is that type of character. He's been around for so damn long as well. Hell, I think there's a possibility. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here before I even get to that section, but I'm too excited. Let me just kind of get into it. There's even a possibility there might have been a Zolodake, right? And I say that because of Nanika, right? The other. This is my answer. And you have someone like Silva Zolodake saying things like, yeah, that thing comes from somewhere else. This is it, isn't it? And then I've got, one of the biggest mysteries of the anime as well, of the Chimera Ant arc. How in the hell did the Chimera Ant Queen get to that point, in that state, right? The origins of the Queen are one of the biggest mysteries of this anime, and I just got the answer essentially. Chimera ants come from this uncharted land or uncharted world, right? It's not really uncharted. They confirm, and Jin confirms that other people have been there. Only a select few, right? Hand selected, perhaps. And really interesting imagery as well as he's speaking of that, right? A select few from a really specific moment in time. It's exciting stuff, man. It's as enticing as it gets, in terms of continuing into the not the anime, sorry, the manga, right? And that kind of reminds me, by the end of this, or maybe even throughout the episode itself, I didn't really feel that dreaded feeling of, oh, this is it. This is going to be the point of no return, as the runtime ticks along and it's getting closer and closer to its conclusion. All of us have had that feeling in finales for all the shows and anime and films that we all love, that lump in your throat, the butterflies. Here it's a little bit different. It's a really unique experience because I've known for some time now the story is going to continue. It's not the last of these characters. It's not the last of these incredible plots and subplots and the story as a whole. It continues. To this day, it continues. So yeah, it's a unique experience in that sense. Right? Say in comparison to something like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Even though I made that point back then. Okay, it feels like now it's our turn to just kind of leave those characters to live their lives, right? It still was the ending of it, right? There's no more manga, no more story continuation beyond that point. So here in Hunter x Hunter, I kind of had a different experience, right? Now, again, it could be a little bit different for other people who made the choice to maybe not continue into the manga, right? I actually know people. I know people that are still holding out for the anime to return or go into production again someday. Right now, at the point of recording this, as far as I know, there's still, no rumors, no hype, or no, leaks or any type of news about the anime coming back anytime soon, or even going into production or anything, pre-production or any of that. So yeah, right now it still feels like, yeah, it might be years off, right? Maybe not years off, maybe there could be something in 2026. By the end of 2026, maybe there could be an announcement mid-2026. Who knows, right? I don't know. You guys know more than me, of course, in terms of, how many chapters they might require for, a decent amount of episodes, right? Clearly, at the moment, they don't feel confident enough that they have enough for, a decent amount of episodes, I suppose. I've read comments from you guys that they could probably do maybe 20, 25 episodes out of the stuff that's out there, maybe something along those lines, but it's still not enough in terms of having a definitive, endpoint to a storyline, perhaps. I don't have all the details because I cannot have those details, it's manga stuff. So I'll leave that to you guys if you want to, chime in and, give me your thoughts once again, once this is uploaded, how the things stand at that point in time, right? But of course, that's my stance and approach on the matter in terms of continuing the story into the manga. How about the people that are essentially signing off, on episode 148, and that's that, that there's no plans for them to continue into the manga, and maybe one day, the anime might return and they might go back into it, but until then, this is it, right? I think for those people, And as an ending for the anime, and again, the plots of the anime, and again, the long running journey of Gone Freaks, I think, ultimately it's an incredibly satisfying conclusion. I think it really is. It really functions on its own as a conclusion. I did say it a few times, didn't I? It's perfect. It really truly feels perfect. It's satisfying, it's peaceful, it's compelling, it's joyful, poignant, and then some, right? I mean, you see in the ending there, it's an incredible choice to double down and reiterate that message, right? This time it's from Tagashi to the audience, I believe. But also, let's not forget that it is through Jing Freaks, right? The final message of this anime, at the moment, at least. And the message itself is actually rather simple. But, just because it's simple doesn't mean that it's not poignant. It is so poignant, I believe. And I think it just encompasses the entire story. It just ties it all together perfectly, right? It does. It just does. And, the thing is, I think this message has been clear, for us, the audience, for some time now. I think, this is something I bring up on a few occasions, this idea of, the path towards the end goal. All the bonds, the incredible bonds that you make along the way. This is something I bring up quite a bit around the time Gon comes back in, right after he's healed, and you see those bonds, you see those incredible connections of a lifetime, essentially, on display, on showcase, behind him, right? The incredible people he's come across. Mentors, friends, and allies, rivals, in a certain sense. It's just incredible stuff. And one of the most satisfying and fulfilling feelings and moments of this is, Gon is so in the moment, and he's so dialed in, and he completely understands everything Jing has to say to him. I think one of the most beautiful moments of the entire anime is Gon thinking back to those incredible connections that he made, those bonds, right? The really immediate ones as well. Speaking of people like Kurapika, Leorio, and Killua, these are the bonds of a lifetime, connected forever. And yeah, I loved the presentation of that as well. Nothing had to be said in that moment. That close up of his eyes, that did all the talking. It did all the talking, man. And in that moment, I just felt, I don't know, like a proud older brother, a proud father, for Gon. I mean, even though Gon's actual father is right there. But, the feeling there, it didn't really feel, I mean, yes, sure, they have some, really nice father-son moments, but it didn't quite feel like that. I thought it had a really unique, older brother, or again, someone that you really look up to, a mentor. It had that type of feeling about it, didn't it? But of course, there's a much closer relation there, of course, father son and all of that. But listen, even after seeing all of this, you simply have to ask the question once again: who the hell is Gon's mom? Because again, Jing is not the type that you kind of pin down. Right? And Gon understands that. This is a free spirit. And so am I. And I'm speaking of Gon. Gon understands. So, it's rather baffling. It is rather baffling that Jing actually met someone, and, they had a kid together. But again, they're missing from the picture pretty much in the entire anime. They don't even make it a point to actually kind of, go a little bit further into that. I know Mito-san kind of, dances around that idea at some point, but ultimately Gon didn't actually feel that absence because he already had Mito-san, his mother figure, right? And that right there is a beautiful notion as well. It always has been. But going back to the message, the final message, the sign off by Tagashi as well, essentially through Jing, it's so applicable to all of us. Listen, one thing I'll say for sure is that, as I sit here, I'm certainly thinking about a lot of things in terms of, I've neglected a few things. And, I do need to make some time for a lot of these things. And just for like a personal example, let's kind of focus on something like traveling. I think I've neglected traveling quite a bit. I have. And it is something I do want to focus a bit more on, dedicate a lot more time to, right? Listen, I'm not a teenager, I'm not in my early 20s or even mid or late 20s. I'm in my 30s, right? Early 30s, but in my 30s. So yeah, I still feel like I still haven't traveled as much as I, would like to, right? And that just kind of comes down to neglecting it, really. It just kind of hasn't been on my mind, but it should be. It should be, because I do have plans. I've always had plans. I mean, I do have a few trips planned out for 2025, and then of course, hopefully beyond that as well. I'll really kind of focus on that. I should. I really should. High schooler Im had a lot of plans, and I think I owe it to myself to really make those things happen, right? Because I am in a position to make those happen now. So, that actually makes it feel like even more unforgivable, because I am in a position to be doing those things, but I'm just kind of neglecting them, right? So this is a promise, to myself that indeed I'll be focusing much more on that, getting out there, traveling, be a bit more like Jing and Gon, right? I mean, listen, Gon has lived a life that most people don't even live in their lifetimes. And listen, of course, I'm speaking of, within the narrative of the story of this anime, right? The people in this anime, most of them, the majority of them, are not going to be having the experiences that Gon has had in the span of 2 years, right? And again, that is one of the major components of this episode, right? A trip down memory lane. The journey that Gon's been on, the incredible journey and experiences, and the incredible people he's come across, and how there's, again, detours and unexpected directions that he ends up heading into, right? Just because he might have run into someone and he decided, okay, I'm going to help them, or I'm going to join them. And for me, that's one of the standout moments, the orchestral arrangements of these really familiar, pieces of music I've come to love so much throughout this anime, right? Nothing had to be said there, and nothing is said there, because it's all through the imagery. And, Gon, he's got that smile on his face again, right? You can smile again, indeed. And as he's, making his way to that checkpoint, all of these incredible moments are running through his mind. The ups and the downs, the dark times, the good times, the goofy times, the profound times, all of that. You see that he's got this appreciation for all of it, because he understands that all of those things brought him to this point, made him the person he is today. And of course, at the end of the day, it is shonen, right? So even though, a lot of us adults can really enjoy this and really, really, dissect it and dive into it, there's a lot of younger people still watching this and have watched this for years, right? So, these messages are really quite incredible to be giving to young people as well, specifically, right? This idea of making lasting connections, friendships, bonds, and sharing these meaningful experiences with people, and cherishing those times you had with those people. It's something that really resonates, doesn't it? And it's so applicable to real life. So I think it's a beautiful touch by Tagashi to again reiterate and double down on that message. And I think that message has been clear for some time now, right? Again, you can go all the way back to Great Island, and even before that maybe, but for me, it kind of really solidified in Great Island that Jing really wants this type of journey for Gon, right? That by the time he maybe gets to me, that's not even gonna matter, right? Yes, it'll be nice, and Gon is really quite happy to be at that moment, but everything he's been through, that's the thing that Jing wanted for Gon, right? The same thing that happened for Kite as well, on his path to finding Jing. So yeah, this idea of enjoying the little detours to the fullest, because that's where you'll find the things more important than the things that you want. Yeah, it's rather beautiful, isn't it? Because Gon really, really kind of thinks about this whole thing then and there, right? And yes, he found some amazing things, right? Amazing connections. He made some amazing connections, and he found people like Killua, right? Lifelong friends, even if they do have to separate for now. They are going to be friends forever. And then of course there's Leorio, who's just like the heart of this friendship, isn't he? Even now you see he is trying to contact Kurapika, who's still kind of in his, moody state. You see that he's really quite dialed in to, obtaining and retrieving, those eyes of his clan, right? And you see he's rather successful already. He's been rather successful already. And yeah, he's really quite focused on that. And once again, I get a look at that little place that he's sitting in, kind of like a shrine, a dungeon, a shrine for the eyes of his clan, the Scarlet Eyes at that. So yeah, Kurapika, you see that it's almost as if he is not consumed by darkness, but he just kind of not excels. He feels at ease, right, in the darkness at the moment. There's that really interesting moment of him actually coming out, and it's daylight outside, and I thought that was a beautiful touch. Of course, showing us all of them experiencing that same sunrise. But the really beautiful touch is that all of them actually tune in, even if they couldn't make it there in person, to see those swans that I heard of all that time ago, back in the NGL. I'll show you my treasure one day. And here it is. I saw the treasure. I saw the mine. I saw those swans. And it's one of the most memorable moments of the entire anime. It's a beautiful moment, right? And all of them, maybe minus, Kurapika actually, checked in through, computers and phones and all of that. It just had this really beautiful sense of a collective. And the thing is, it's really quite simple, but it's so satisfying and fulfilling to see those smiles on all of their faces. Even the pink koala's got a smile on his face. Of course, Gon's got that beaming, massive smile on his face. And yeah, it's something that does bring a smile to your face, right? It's a profound moment. I think, you could actually call it quite a profound moment for all of them. And there's some really lovely intimate moments as well, between Nav and Moral, right, paying tribute to the GOAT, Netero, who I feel is going to live on in the manga, right? Surely, again, through flashbacks perhaps, but yeah, I feel like I'm not done just yet. I'll get to see Netero in some capacity, especially because I do feel that he must have been part of that expedition, right? The one and only, essentially, right, according to Jing. One of the highest compliments I can give to this specific ending here in episode 148 is that, it doesn't feel like a cop-out at any point. There's no, frustrating cliffhangers or anything. It is a definitive ending to the anime. It functions so effectively as a definitive ending for the anime, yet there is a lot of enticing and interesting stuff for the people that do want to continue. But for others, this could be quite a satisfying ending, because it is an ending to Gon's journey, at least this journey specifically, right? Am I interested and excited to see how things play out for Gon and how things continue for Gon? Sure, of course I am. But the thing is, at the moment, again, this is just speaking for myself. And, I don't say this as a negative or, criticizing anything. I feel that at the moment, it's fine for me to just kind of hang back for a bit, take a break, because that's how this finale kind of made me feel that, okay, that was satisfying. That was just fulfilling and perfect. That now, I can take a bit of a break from this story. And then, once the time comes, dive right back into it. And I'm sure that's going to be so damn exciting. Listen, the one thing I know for sure is by the time I get to the manga, I'll have some kind of, I'll have a plan, of course. I'm not just going to just get into it and then, kind of, wing it. I'm sure I'll have some kind of plan laid out for myself in terms of approaching the manga and how exactly I'll be approaching the manga. And I know it might be a little bit disappointing for, many of you, but again, a page by page reaction is exceedingly unlikely. I just don't see myself doing something like that. I've never actually had the urge to do something like that. I just feel like that's not me. It's not for me. But once again, just to keep it realistic, and I'll probably, say this again in the wrap up I'll do for Hunter x Hunter as a story or anime. And, again, touching up on the different arcs and different characters, and perhaps much more of a major focus on the Chimera Ant arc specifically, because originally that was a plan. I'll do something separate just for the Chimera Ant arc, but I feel that I can use that as a wrap up. Go through the different arcs. There's not that many arcs, so I feel like I can squeeze that in as well. And that's I'm going to save a lot of my thoughts on the story as a whole, the anime as a whole, or the different story arcs. I'll save it for that. This right here is more so just for this episode. But just going back to that point I made about Gon, and of course I want to learn about the next phase of his life and all of that. Of course, it's not just that. It's many other things, many other characters, right? Killua, Naluka, Leorio, Phantom Troop, all the characters introduced in the election arc, Pariston, Jing, more of Jing hopefully, and of course I might be forgetting a few, but of course my expectation is to just get a focus on other characters as well, perhaps even more so than Gon and Killua at this point, because again, the entire anime is kind of focused on them. Maybe for the most part, if you look at the Chimera Ant arc, that's a different beast altogether. So I do think it's about time that characters like Kurapika come back in. I do think it's time to focus a bit more on Leorio, and to again build on everything I kind of got in the election arc. It's a bit of a it's quite the tease, it's quite the setup, isn't it? That incredible lineup of characters that's introduced really late in the anime here. But again, one of the standouts, or the standout, being Pariston. And again, I've got the new chairman, Cheadle, and the whole Hunter Association aspect of it, the politics of it, really, really engaging stuff. So I've got a lot of things that I'm hoping for in the manga. And yes, I know it's not going to come all at the same time. I've got my expectations in check for sure. I've seen 148 episodes of this, so I kind of know the dynamics. I know how Togashi kind of functions in terms of, okay, he'll focus on a few characters for one arc, and then they kind of disappear, and then a few others come in for the next arc, and then they might come in really, really later on. Someone like Leorio just showed up again for the first time in a long time. But of course, one of the things that's at the top of the list is this idea of going to the place beyond. And again, if that is going to end up being one of the focal points of the upcoming, arcs or plots in the manga, then that means Jing is going to be at the center of it, or at least one of the characters that's going to be at the center of it. Because of course, there is going to be others that might be interested in that, right? I'm guessing an expedition of that nature certainly needs a team. You're not going out there alone. But the crazy thing is, the moment I saw Jing describing a full-on adult world tree, that it's able to take on magma, and the roots go deep into a mountain, I said, I think I've seen this before, right? Yeah, I think I have. And this happened around the time I get that incredible cut to Jing in some place, right? And he happens to be on top of a creature that happens to be on top of a dragon. And then I see that tree, and it's got this, a storm around just that tree. Now, do I think that's actually the place he's speaking of? The world beyond and everything? I don't think so, because I feel like he has no reason to hide that from Gon at this point. I think he's just straight up telling him how things have progressed, right? In terms of potentially getting something going, and that he still doesn't have any of the 4 things checked off yet. But I think maybe that was some place close to it, right? But again, a thing to note here, or there, is that it's a much younger looking Jing. I remember he looked much younger in comparison to the Jing I see now. So I don't know if that's even an actual look at Jing at that point in time, or if it was just, something that's a little bit out of context and not even canon, just kind of, presenting this notion of this hunter who's out there doing these types of things, And then, of course, that idea of a fully grown, full-size tree. You see it in that little map thing, that depiction of, again, the world beyond. Right up on the top of the frame, you see it, and it's, again, surrounded by the storm. And then again, if you look at the rest of the frame, it's got dinosaur-like creatures. One of them's breathing fire. There's floating structures. There's this giant hand coming out of the ground. I mean, it essentially feels like Skull Island, doesn't it? Right? It's not something you do for fun. You could get killed. Anyone who goes on this type of expedition could get killed. But again, that being said, I do believe that Netero must have been there. The one time Jing did mention about, someone actually going there, or, a select few going there. And again, like I said, I do believe there must have been maybe one Zoldyck as well. This idea of Nanika, the other, somehow, latching on and coming back and becoming a part of that Zoldyck family. And then, maybe latching on to, not maybe, it does latch on to Aluka, right? But, for that to happen, it had to be brought out of there somehow, right? Be it by choice or, again, it kind of just latched itself on, right? And that Zoldyck, whoever it might end up being, took it home and didn't even know it, unless the Zoldyck did know it, right? Again, there's a lot of room for speculation there. But see, as I'm on the topic, okay, finding out that the Chimera Ants, or in this case, the Chimera Ant Queen comes from there is one thing, but how the hell did it actually get here? And as you'll remember, that's one of the questions I had. Okay, I don't know the origins of the Chimera Ant Queen, but how the hell did it even get here to this really specific point in time, or place in time, right? Now, even more so than before, it's beginning to feel manufactured, that it's been actually, designed in that manner. So it can play out, right? That the queen is going to be in a place that she's not going to be disturbed or not going to be stopped. And she is going to get to carry out that cycle of, again, birthing these Chimera Ants, and ultimately a Chimera Ant King Meruem, the legend, who I see. Oh my goodness, I just remembered. I saw the Marshal and the Spy one last time. I mean, I suppose it's not really meant to be a live look at their bodies because, there's no decomposing going on there, right? So maybe it's kind of taking me back in time a bit to that moment. Hand in hand. How beautiful is that? Didn't expect that. I really didn't expect that. But once I got it, it just made everything so much better. But yeah, that idea of Periston, who's collecting all of these Chimera Ant hybrids, or he has collected them at this point, for his experiments, or to have a bit of fun, as Jing put it. So yeah, I speculated episodes ago that, listen, Periston does seem like the type, especially now that there is a connection to those hybrid Chimera Ants as well. He could be the type who might have known about the queen, right? And left the queen there to do its thing, right? Left as in, he didn't do anything about it. Or you could go even further. Maybe Periston did facilitate and manufacture all of that. Listen, it's possible. I think it's entirely possible. But yeah, if that is the case, you're looking at stuff that's under the radar. Maybe this could kind of even go back to that idea of secret missions. Maybe, there are some secret expeditions to this place that no one knows about. And, the Chimera Ant might have been brought back. The queen, rather, might have been brought back. And, that might explain the injuries as well, possibly. I don't know, man. That's, again, one of the unknowns, one of the really baffling unknowns. It's essentially on its last legs, fighting for its life, that it's been in this encounter. And then, I found that a bit of refuge, on that beach, in that cave. And the rest is history, of course. And again, learning about the place beyond, and that, the world that the people know about, or, most people know about, is just barely scratching the surface, right? And that, most adults that have common sense don't even go near that Pandora's box. But there's a select few that do want to open that Pandora's box, right? And of course, I don't need to, finish that to its natural conclusion. All of us know how that ends, or can end, rather. But yeah, to me, I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but again, I've been a One Piece fan for a majority of my life, more than half of my life at this point. It did give me that feeling of finding out about a new place, going to a new place, a new place being set up, Grand Line. And again, there's countless examples, but it did give me a similar feeling. Though, here, it really truly felt like something that's really, really quite dangerous. and that it's not common at all in the grand scheme of things. But, let's kind of go back to something Jing said, right? The information that he gave us. There are records showing that a chosen few from a select time and place were able to make it outside, right? Now, of course, the next question becomes, these chosen few, how? How exactly are they chosen, selected to make this expedition, right? And then, this idea of given a contract, as, Jing kind of outlines one of the 4 categories, right? That you need a contract. You need to have the means to travel to this place. And I'm sure that right there is an incredibly dangerous journey as well. You need qualification. So I'm not sure if that means, the star system, the hunter star system. And, again, Jing kind of chooses to not really, go through the official process of becoming a triple star hunter, even though, according to Kite, he is a triple star hunter, essentially, realistically. Or if it's a different type of qualification, right? A different, maybe it is a different type of qualification, again, given the really dangerous nature of it all, right? Especially because you could bring things back. There's an example of something like the other Nanika. In this case, Nanika happens to have someone like Killua and Aluka, but that doesn't mean that everything that actually resides in that other place is not insidious. I'm sure there's plenty of insidious creatures and beings and, again, spirits. I mean, you can see in that illustration that, as far as size is concerned, the world of, Hunter x Hunter that everyone knows, it's essentially tiny in comparison, even in comparison to these creatures, right? I mean, hell, I think I saw something that looked like or resembled like an overgrown chocobo even, Maybe that's by design, a bit of a cameo, not cameo, just a bit of a reference perhaps. I know Tagashi's a big fan of Dragon Quest. I know it's not quite Final Fantasy, but I know he's a big fan of, JRPG. I mean, who isn't, right? But yeah, I know Tagashi's got a thing for Dragon Quest specifically. I do want to go back to the final montage, and, I get to hear the full version of the intro song, right? I certainly heard stuff that I didn't hear before. And yeah, let's kind of go through it. I already kind of touched up on most of it actually, but Moral and Noph Sensei, you see that, there's that really wholesome moment of them kind of settling the bet. But yeah, you see that, they're both a little bit undecided in terms of, okay, whose bet actually came out on top. At the end of the day, it didn't matter, did it? They used the money, they kind of brought it together, I suppose. And yeah, they made the choice to really, pay tribute to the late chairman, to Netero, right? And you see that the champagne they got, or the wine that they got, yeah, it's something that's clearly really quite pricey and rare. Worthy of the late chairman, of course. They didn't cheap out. You can tell they didn't cheap out. So I thought that's a really touching and beautiful moment. And of course, there's a quick look at Killua and Aluka already out there looking at these incredible places, being in these incredible places. So, Killua, he's doing a damn good job already. And again, these are new places for Killua as well. So how beautiful is that, they both get to experience these things together as siblings for the first time. And of course, they show me Leorio, and his living arrangement is really rather sweet. Really impressive as he studies, for his own goal. And again, like I mentioned, he tried calling Kurapika again. And they even take me to the Zoldyck estate because I almost kind of, I had a bit of a shocker, I thought at least. And then, that creature begins to transform. And, I immediately recognized that creature from the Hunter exam. And, they even cut back to Killua speaking with one of those creatures. So I think they made it really quite clear that Killua doesn't know that Goto died. So I'm not sure who actually sanctioned it, but they didn't want Killua to know. So this creature is always going to just mimic, or I don't know, embody Goto anytime it's in the presence of Killua. Maybe Goto himself actually, put this in motion. If by the off chance he does end up, dying on the job or something, this is how it should be handled. I don't know. It's an interesting thing that's playing out here. Ultimately, they don't want Killua to know that, Goto ended up dying because of this plan of his, this mission of his, right? That he ended up being a bit of a sacrifice. Before this, I just kind of assumed Killua just knows, and they just kind of did that off screen. But no, it doesn't appear to be the case. And a component I really liked about Jing's story, or him telling Gon his story rather, early days of becoming a hunter and establishing that not-for-profit, and kind of collecting or bringing together 10 oddballs and all of that. I love that all of them are just regular people, right? He specified these are just, regular office workers, graduate students, and job hoppers. Normal people. These are not some eccentric, master hunters or anything, yet they had so much to give to someone like Jing, and you see how much he appreciated that. To the point that ultimately, it didn't even matter anymore. Yeah, it must have felt good to actually, get in there finally in that tomb. But ultimately, he had so much appreciation for the process of it all. Like I said, it truly felt like he fell in love with the process. And all of us have been there, right? This idea of coming together as a group and accomplishing something, right? The whole process of it. At times, it can be really quite difficult, challenging, to the point that you might feel the need to, call it a day, and maybe that's the end of that. But ultimately, kind of sticking to it, that whole process, it can be incredibly fulfilling. And I love that Jing has so much respect for those people, and that to this day they are a part of that not-for-profit, and they do give Jing relevant information. Right. I love that. He does have a lot of respect for his colleagues. And, this is the reason I immediately felt that Jing must have been so happy about the friends that Gon has made, the people that he's come across. He can probably see a bit of himself at that age, through the friends that Gon has made. I felt so clearly that, okay, the moment he saw Leorio and, got to listen to him and the type of friend he is, he must have been content. He must have been happy. And, he had that trust in the people around Gon, the friends that Gon has, that indeed, Gon is going to be fine. He'll be healed. And again, subsequently, that meant that Periston also bought into that idea and just kind of accepted, okay, if Jing believes it, then I'll take it as a fact, right? If he's got faith in Gon's friends, so do I, right? And ultimately, that plays a major part in Periston's trajectory of that election. But yeah, the time that they spend together up there at the top, there's that one segment of them just shooting the shit, and just having a blast, telling each other about their run-ins and, experiences, and incredible experiences at that, and bizarre ones as well, perhaps. First, Gon tells him a bit, then Jing tells him a bit, they go back and forth, and you see they legitimately have a good time. Jing is legitimately having a good time, right? He's really rather dialed in. He cares about this, because at this point, Gon has gone through quite a trajectory to get to this point, and he's got some incredible stories to share as well. So, that whole thing, Jing and Gon coming together, I think that's just, it's one of the standout moments of the anime, and, it completely just lives up to all of it. It just really, truly felt perfect, to me at least, that coming together. But yeah, I think for now, I'll end it off on that note. But again, there is going to be a wrap up. Yes, it might not be immediately after this, but it's coming. It's coming. And there, I'll kind of focus a bit more on the specific arcs and the characters, and Chimera Ant arc specifically as well. But yeah, listen, folks, I've got to thank all of you, the ones that have been around for years, the new people that discovered my channel, my content through Hunter x Hunter. Yeah, it's been a fantastic time. It's been an incredible time. I've actually come across a lot of really cool people in the comment section. Interesting people, and I certainly hope to see many of you for other stuff as well. But yeah, listen, even if you do make the choice to move on after Hunter x Hunter, I appreciate it. I really do, that you join me for my own journey through this incredible anime. And yeah, I appreciate you dropping by into the comments, giving your thoughts, and ultimately, I'm just really incredibly happy that I was able to do this, right? For myself and for many of you, for all of you as well. I know, this means quite a bit to a lot of people. So of course, it's an incredible feeling that I was able to do this for many of you as well, that you got to live through that experience one more time through me, through my first time experience. And it was an incredible experience. So just in case, a lot of you don't come back for the wrap up, I do want to thank you. Thank you for joining me. But yeah, one last time, at least for the episodic format uploads, if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping your comments. I'm really quite excited for this comment section. Give me your thoughts, folks. I would love to hear your thoughts. And yeah, at this point, there's no more early access, but there's timer-based full length and full opacity, the entire collection, all 146 or so episodes, full length and full opacity, immediate access to all of it. The links are in the description and the pinned comment, also links to social media. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks. Thank you so much for your time. Over the span of these past 146 episodes, it means quite a bit. I really appreciate that you gave me your time. Because time is precious and there's just so much content out there. So, I'm always incredibly thankful and I really appreciate that, I've been given that time. And, I feel that I try my absolute best to make sure that your time is, well spent. So if indeed for many of you this might be the last time, thank you so much. Really, thank you for dropping by this whole time. I do appreciate it, and I've had a blast. And again, like I said, I hope to see many of you around for other stuff, and again, for the wrap up. And then, down the line, I'm looking at maybe, late 2025, early 2026, Hunter x Hunter manga content. Right then, until then, take it easy.